Hey folks, I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blenderhd from RotoGrinders, and I'm going to show you how I used RotoGrinders LineupHQ to build my lineups for this past NFL slate. One of them winning $50,000 in the $9 slant. And I brought up LineupHQ that I had last night. I still have my build, and just to show you the process and the strategy that I employed in order to take down that GPP, which was 65,000 entries and coming in first for 50,000. And we scroll all the way down in LineupHQ. It was lineup 71, I believe. Yeah, here we go. 71. Right. This lineup scored 253 point something, 0.24 in the $9 slant for 50,000. Would have came in second in the Millie Maker for 150,000, but I wasn't playing the Millie this week. So I got Mac Ryan with Julio Jones and running back with Justin Jefferson. So the 2+1 stack. Okay. Now, why was I on Ryan, Jones, Jefferson? Well, the chalk this slate was heavy on the Vikings, and it was heavy on Madison in the running back position and Thielen in the wide receiver position. If people were going to play that stack, it was most likely going to be with Kirk Cousins, like a Cousins, Thielen, Irv Smith in the tight end type of stack with Ridley primarily as the run back. Ridley was a little higher owned. Julio Jones coming off of injury, under 7K, came in at under 10% owned. So I thought Julio was leverage off of Ridley in that type of stack, and then running it with Ryan plus Jones, and then getting the leverage off of Madison was like 27% owned, and Thielen was 20% owned. So the negatively correlated play to those two chalk plays was Justin Jefferson. And he's obviously explosive. The game had a high total. So if Thielen and Madison fail, who benefits? Justin Jefferson. So I played a ton of Justin Jefferson. And I ran it back this way, 2+1. Then, because I was not playing Madison in the lineup, the 7K running back that would fit in that spot that's not Madison in this lineup would be Derrick Henry. Okay, so you plug in Derrick Henry against the Texans. He was pretty chalky. Okay, but I didn't mind eating the Derrick Henry chalk because Julio was going to be lower owned and Jefferson was going to be lower owned. Okay, so I don't need to get all that much more different in this lineup. So you play Henry on one side. Well, if Henry has a big game, two sides of a game are typically correlated if they shoot out. Right? More big plays, more plays in the game, more points scored, more fantasy points are available now. So Henry has a big game, while the passing attack for the Texans on the other side. So either Fuller or Cooks. Okay? And then based on, obviously, if I'm playing expensive running back, expensive wide receiver, that type of lineup, probably have to save a little bit of salary. So I went Brandon Cooks. But also, Brandon Cooks was 5,000. He came in at about 10% owned. Chase Claypool was 25% owned at 5,200. AJ Brown was about the same owned at 5,600. So like Brandon Cooks was good leverage in wide receiver at that price range as like a price range leverage type of move. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks. Now, because I already have as much leverage as I'll need, I'm going to take the chalk running back to fill it out. You know, Mike Davis, he was my highest exposed running back. So like plug him in, 7,000, plug him in, let me get the points. He was one of the highest owned players. He didn't do well. He was my only snowflake in the lineup, but I didn't need it. I need more than 12.5 points. So he was fine. And then saving money, go down. Tight end was a wasteland this slate. So punting at tight end, you could have punted with nearly anyone, right? If you wanted to play Darren Fells, you could have played Darren Fells. You could have played Austin Hooper. You could have played Irv Smith. You could have played Anthony Ferkser. You could have played a ton of tight ends. So I went with Trey Burton. I had a lot of Trey Burton. So because I have Trey Burton in the lineup, correlating if it fits, third correlation, T. Higgins, 4,700 on the other side of the game. And he ended up coming, we projected him for 4% ownership. He came in at under 3, like 2.7 or something like that. And then the last spot is whatever defense fits in, right? Defense, the variance on defense is so high. So it's just like whatever fits in the lineup, fits in the lineup. Steelers fit in the lineup. Of course, they were the highest scoring defense for 18 points. So they got there. So you can see here that there are 3 correlations in the lineup. a 2+1 skinny stack. And I was skinny stacking that most of my lineups because I wanted to jam in as many wide receivers as possible. I thought on this slate there were more wide receivers that had chances of 20+ games than running backs. So I was playing a lot of wide receiver in the flex. So I could get a stack as well as wide receiver one-offs or wide receiver, obviously, 1+1 correlations. So that's why the skinny stack, because Ryan plus Jones plus Ridley was 7,800. So, like, for Jones to get there at 6,700 and Ridley, like, they need to put up like 60 points for that to happen. So I don't want to rely on that. I played Ridley and Jones separately. I played Jefferson and Thielen separately. So in a Cousins lineup, it would be Cousins, Thielen, Smith, right? Something like that. And in a Ryan lineup, it would be Ryan, Julio, Hurst, or Gage, but not Jones and Ridley together, because I didn't think that on a 11-game slate that both of these guys could put up 30+ points. It was going to be one or the other. And you could see with the groups that I make to make these lineups, if I scroll all the way back up, they correspond to that. You can see my exposures here, right, as I build lineups, but even in the player groups. So for instance, I had T. Higgins in the lineup. Now I figured that they were playing in Indy, you know, that's a dome game, right? It's on the fast track that the Bengals players weren't really going to be owned, right? Mixon will have a little ownership, Higgins a little, Boyd really little, but the Colts were favored in the game. I mean, it didn't end up that way, but the Colts were favored in the game, so I figured that the only way that the Bengals receivers put up 100+ point games is if that game goes over. So if that game goes over, that means most probably someone on the Colts has done well, right, to put up a bunch of points. So in my player pool, I had Jonathan Taylor from the Colts, I had T.Y. Hilton from the Colts, and I had Trey Burton from the Colts. So I would go into my player groups, and I set up this type of group. If you could see here, look how many groups I have. I have 50 groups that I've set up. But one of these groups is use T. Higgins as a conditional player, use exactly one. So anytime that T. Higgins is in a lineup, it has to use one of Taylor, Hilton, or Burton. And I have the same one for Tyler Boyd, right? I'm thinking of this beforehand, right? I'm going through should I be playing Higgins or Boyd as a one-off? And I decided that it's more likely that another player, that I could make a secondary correlation there. I didn't play any Rivers. I didn't play any Burrow. So I wasn't playing them as my primary stacks. But as the secondary correlation, I wanted to make sure that happened. We could see in my primary stacks, if you see here, I made primary stacks as well as second stacks in about a half of my lineups, and third stacks in about a third of my lineups. So my primary stacks, which is in 100%, I stack in every lineup for large field. I had quarterback plus 2 pass catchers and a run back from the other team. So this is a 3+1 stack. Then I also have the skinny stacks. Quarterback, pass catcher, run back. 2+1. Then I also had some naked, just 1+1 with no run back. And they were primarily I played 3 Lamar Jackson lineups. I didn't see anyone in the Eagles that I wanted to play. So that was fine. Or very expensive guys like Minnesota, Cousins, Thielen. That's it. Green Bay, Rodgers, Adams. That's it. And then the other side of the ball is kind of spread out. Detroit, Stafford, Galladay. And that's it. No one running back from Jacksonville because they spread the ball around a lot. But I only had this in 8% of my lineups, right? These 1+1s and that's it. I mean, it's not as stackable of a lineup, but the skinny stacks, I had 56% of lineups. And then the 3+1 larger stacks, 36% of my lineups. And then my second stacks, I make sure to pair a running back with an opposing wide receiver or tight end. Secondary stack, wide receiver with an opposing wide receiver tight end. So that's 26%. This is 48%. And then I get to check the teams that it makes the most sense on, right? Because I condense my player pool to begin with. I'm not including everyone in my player pool. I exclude everyone, and then I bring back the players that I want. So I had no one from Philadelphia in my player pool at all. So I don't have to check the boxes. I'm not going to get any Zach Ertz. I'm not going to get any Travis Fulgham or Miles Sanders because I didn't want to play them at all. So they weren't even in my pool. So they weren't even available to me. But I still have, like, okay, running back, wide receiver on Miami. So that would be Gaskin plus Crowder. So I want to make sure that in half my lineups, I have at least this correlation, or 26% of my lineups, at least this correlation, wide receiver, pass catcher. And then my third stacks and a third of my lineups, I make this just to correlate running back and defense together, which is not the strongest of correlations, but I want to tell LineupHQ that if it's possible, do it. If I set this to 100%, it's going to force too much. I'm going to get a ton of Davis and the Panthers because I'm playing a ton of Davis. I'm going to get a ton of Gaskin and the Dolphins because I'm playing a ton of Gaskin. So I don't want to force like every single running back and defense to go together, but enough so, like a third of it. And then I check all the boxes of all the running backs that I'm playing, right? I played some Madison. I played some Freeman, Gibson, Montgomery, Davis, Gaskin, Mixon, Taylor, David Johnson, Henry, AP, and James Robinson. So, like, I just check all the boxes that I have a running back from. And it's like, okay, if you find a place to put them in, put them in. And then I set the player groups to correspond with everything. If you take a look how many player groups I had. So, I mean, I could go to the first one of like, okay, I don't want to play two running backs from the same game against each other. Typically, they're negatively correlated. In some cases, they may not be if they catch a lot of passes, but it's less probable that Mixon and Taylor gets there. If Mixon ends up with 25 touches, most likely it's because the Bengals are up and the Colts players have not gotten there, and vice versa. So I'm doing that type of stuff. I didn't want Golladay and Jones in the same lineup. I was under on Lion stacks because they were chalky, right? That's why I played a lot of Adrian Peterson. DeAndre Swift was the one that got there, but it was the same type of concept of like a lot of people are playing Golladay, a lot of people are playing the passing game in the Lions. I want to play the running game as leverage. But Golladay and Jones, if I was playing Stafford stacks, I just didn't want them in the same lineup because they're negatively correlated to each other, right? And we could go through a whole bunch of them. Here, like since I was playing, here's one. Since I was very under on the Lions passing game, I had some Golladay. But playing Golladay as a one-off seems stupid, with Stafford being kind of chalky also. So if Golladay ends up with a 40-point game, most likely the Lions stacks win. So I only want to play him in stacks of that game. I don't mind if I'm playing Minshew on the other side, which is less owned. I don't mind that much. So I set up a group that if Golladay is in the lineup, it has to be with one of these two quarterbacks because the quarterbacks are the linchpins of a stack. So once I do this, that means Golladay will never show up as a one-off, right? The stack has to be there. Either he's the wide receiver in a normal stack, or he's the run back in the opposing passing stack. So these are the types of groups that I built. So let's go to another one. Here's one: Ridley and Jones. I used as if Kirk Cousins is in the lineup, it has to be Ridley or Jones. Those were the run backs. I didn't want to have a Viking stack with Russell Gage as the run back or Hayden Hurst as the run back. If the Vikings put up a bunch of points, one of these two wide receivers is more likely to be the one with the ceiling game. So you think these are the things you think of when you go through every player in your player pool. So I go to my player pool. I have here all my running backs, right? I go, well, if I have Gaskin in the lineup, I probably should have Crowder in the lineup. But can I play Gaskin as a one-off as a running back? Yeah, I can. A lot of running backs you could play as a one-off. I didn't play any New England players, yet I still had some Phillip Lindsay in my lineups, right? Right? I had some James Robinson, but James Robinson maybe I didn't have James Robinson and Golladay in the same lineup together because Golladay had to appear with the quarterback. So James Robinson for a one-off, that was perfectly fine. But we take a look at the wide receivers, like Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin. Like I had a lot of guys. If we took a look at my exposures, I was trying to play as much leverage plays as possible on this slate. Madison chalk, Thielen chalk, A.J. Brown chalk, Golladay chalk, Chase Claypool chalk. We had Tannehill and Fitzpatrick were popular. So I'm like, okay, if people are going to play David Montgomery ended up coming in at about 25% owned. So leverage off of David Montgomery would be Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson came in 5% owned in the $9 slant. He didn't get there, but I wanted to play a bunch of them because of that. Because he's negatively correlated to David Montgomery. People that are going to play David Montgomery, the running game doesn't get there, but the passing game does. Same reason why I played a bunch of Robbie Anderson. If you see, I still played Mike Davis in like 52% of my lineups. But in the lineups that didn't have Davis, I played a bunch of Robbie Anderson. That correlates. See, I can play chalk David Montgomery, but now I'm getting leverage and getting different by playing Robbie Anderson with him together. The 1-to-1 correlation. And then vice versa on the other side, right? Mike Davis is chalky. Well, I'm going to play Allen Robinson across from him, right? So to mitigate that chalk. I had Terry McLaurin in the same range as like A.J. Brown and Chase Claypool. Leverage off of a price position. Same for Darius Slayton, right? I had a bunch of Daniel Jones stacks. They didn't get there, right? Daniel Jones plus Slayton plus either Tater Ingram and plus Terry McLaurin as the run back or Antonio Gibson as the run back, right? I thought that was a game. It was the lowest total on the slate. Maybe it happens. They hit the right price ranges. I'm able to jam in Devontae Adams into that lineup. Maybe that one hits. But if you go here, I was under on Thielen, but I still had 16% Thielen. I still had 17% A.J. Brown. I still had 14% Derrick Henry. I still had 13% Chase Claypool. They fit in lineups that are more contrarian. So they're still good plays. In a vacuum, they're some of the highest projected plays. It doesn't mean I want to play zero of them, but I want to play them in lineups that are contrarian. And I don't mind playing chalky players in lineups that it makes sense, that I'm correlating with. If you're playing Chase Claypool and you have OBJ on the other side of that game, that's perfectly fine. Do that. OBJ was 4% owned. You don't have to play a full game stack, just 1 versus 1. So if that game does well, it's more likely that someone from one side of the game does well as well, and you have both of them. While you're competing against lineups that the 25% of lineups that have Chase Claypool, it's just there sitting in by himself. You have the Browns piece that goes along with it. The same thing when it came to like people that have Gaskin, you should play Crowder. If you had Adams, if you played a Rodgers-Adams stack, you should have played Godwin and Evans on the other side, right? Godwin was single-digit owned. Devontae Adams wasn't even all that owned. He was like 12, 13% owned, and I had what? I had 33% of him. He busted, right? He didn't make a salary. The Bucks blew them out. So, I'm just going by leverage. I'm trying to play as many of the leverage plays as I possibly can, right? In the lineups that I'm building. So it's not a matter of me picking plays. I'm not picking plays. I'm seeing what everyone else picks, right? And they're picking for the right reason. They're the highest probability plays. Alexander Madison was the highest probability running back. But that probability isn't 100%. If we even look, I'm not sure if we still have the smash percentage up. Let me go and find this out. If Jamino, this is the type of stuff that you could get with premium membership to RotoGrinders. You get LineupHQ. You can build all your lineups with all the features of LineupHQ that you want, right? And we have plenty of tutorials. I've done multiple process builds and how every feature, me, Tambo, Britt, we've done them all. Squad Patrol has done them. Cards has done. We've all done process videos in all the sports on how to use every feature in LineupHQ and every feature in everything else that we have here. Let's see if I can find it. Can we get I don't know if they rolled it over. I'm not sure if they rolled it over. Where's the smash percentages? We have to look for the smash percentages. I think I could Google it. RotoGrinders smash percentages. Let's see if we could bring that up. But this is the type of stuff you get in premium. Go to rotogrinders.com/premium and you get $5 off your first month, I believe, if we're running the promo or have a Core 4 subscription. Yeah, okay, here we go with this is what Jamino does based on the RotoGrinders projections, okay? It'll be slightly different depending on the projection set that you use. You can calculate this stuff in Excel if you want yourself. But smash percentage just means, if they're going to get a GPP winning score, that you're going to need them in the lineup, right? If Mike Davis put up 22 points at 7K, like that's not a smash, right? That's enough points, but it's not like a had-to-have type of score. Derrick Henry put up a had-to-have type of score. Jefferson put up a had-to-have type of score. So based on the RotoGrinders projections, you could even get those probabilities. But most people think in terms of, oh, they can't possibly get there, or, oh, they're a lock. But like in NFL, 30% is high to get a smash. Not like just make value. I'm talking about putting up a score that is going to be necessary in GPPs. So we have this all here. Look, A.J. Brown, 33%. Kenny Golladay, 31%. Thielen, 29%. Madison, 28%. Davis, 28%. Adams, 27%. McLaurin, 26%. I mean, these are all guys that didn't really get there. Like A.J. Brown put up enough points, but you didn't need him. Golladay put up, he was decent, right? I mean, he put up decent, and he still didn't get there to be necessary. But Alexander Madison will smash 28% of the time. Well, 72% of the time, he won't. What happens in that 72% of the time that he doesn't smash? Who benefits from that? If Thielen doesn't smash, 29%. Like, these are the best plays. You could play these guys in lineups, but they're going to be owned also. Because, look, you can see, it's not on the screen, but you could also see, you could compare that to ownership. So I'm taking a look at a guy like, I go down and I find Justin Jefferson. If I search here, Justin Jefferson, 16% smash percentage. Okay? But he's only going to be owned 9%. The smash is above the ownership. And he's negatively correlated with Madison and Thielen, who are up here. So in the 70% of times that Thielen fails, in the 70% of times that Madison fails, and when I say fails, I mean like doesn't put up a GPP winning score, who benefits from that? Justin Jefferson. So this is all I'm looking at. I'm trying to build lineups that I'm basing my lineups based on what you guys are doing. If you're building lineups on a Sunday morning, right? All the stuff that you've listened to and all the projections you've looked at and everything, we could all identify the best plays. If we ran this slate 1,000,000 times, A.J. Brown gets there more likely than any other player, then Golladay, then Thielen, then Madison, then Davis. But we only get to run this slate once. And in one time, Thielen could fail, right? Because he's going to fail, and he's going to not smash about 70% of the time. So if you're going to take a shot at Thielen, I'm going to play who benefits if Thielen doesn't do well, right? If that's what you're going to do. If Thielen only came in at 12% owned, I wouldn't have had that much of Justin Jefferson. I probably would have had more Thielen, right? I would have been like, oh, Thielen, 30% chance to smash, and he's only going to be 12% owned. Load up on Thielen. But no, more people played Thielen, so I played the opposite of that, right? Golladay was one of the higher owned players. He had one of the highest smash percentages up here. But in the cases that he doesn't smash, and you guys are playing him, who benefits from that? You could still play Golladay in lineups, but you need the other, like, you shouldn't be playing Brown, Golladay, Thielen, Madison, Davis. You shouldn't be playing all these guys in the same lineup if you're playing large field GPPs. Because so many other lineups have these guys in them, right? They're the best plays. That's what you should be doing in double-ups. Well, you don't have to come in first. You can just come in the top 45th percentile, right? You know, you get over the cash line in a 50-50. That's all you need. Coming in first in a double-up gets you the same amount of money as coming in 50th in a 100-man 50-50, right? Like that type of thing. So you don't need ceilings. So you can play all the best. You can play all the best plays you want. But in a 65,000 entry contest that I'm playing, I play primarily large field contests. You need to find places to get leverage. So in a lineup that has Mike Davis, I'm playing Allen Robinson at 5% owned, right? And I'm playing Myles Gaskin in that lineup with the Dolphins defense, which was kind of chalky. Like, you could, once you get enough leverage in your lineup, then you could just jam in the good plays, right? I had A.J. Brown in 17% of my lineups, but he was in properly leveraged lineups. Madison, I had him 17%. Thielen, 16%. It's not like these were bad plays in a vacuum, but you have to make sure that you build your lineups. Like, we go to my Madison lineups, for instance. Like, let's just pick one out of the blue, right? Here's a Madison lineup. Okay, here we go. Here's the first one. It didn't do well, right? Okay, this was a Brady stack. This was a Tampa Bay, Green Bay stack right up here. So Brady to Godwin and Adams as the run back, right? Once I did this, Brady was like 3% owned. Godwin was like 5% owned. Adams was 13% owned. Like, I'm getting leverage. So, like, I could play Alexander Madison in this lineup, right? At 35% ownership. I could play Chase Claypool in this lineup at high ownership. I already got enough leverage. Then I played Devontae Freeman and Terry McLaurin as the 1-1 running back opposing wide receiver correlation. And then whatever defense fit, whatever tight end and defense fit into there. So once I got enough leverage, then I could play. Who's the best running back play on the slate? Alexander Madison. Yeah, he got 4 points. He didn't get there. He busted completely. But it makes sense in this lineup, right? We could go to any lineup. Let's go to the Kenny Golladay lineups. Where's Golladay in here? Because I only played him in Stafford stacks, right? So we go to Golladay. So here we go. Stafford plus Golladay. I was 1-1. Who's the run back? James Robinson at 10% owned, right? Then I have Robbie Anderson. He was lower owned. Terry McLaurin. See, I'm jamming what I decided to do before the slate. I want to jam as many high ceiling wide receivers as possible into my lineup. Golladay, McLaurin, Anderson, Adams. If take any one of these guys, if they put up 150 yards on 10 receptions and 2 touchdowns, you wouldn't be surprised by any of these names, right? So that's why I wanted to jam them in as much as possible. So that's why you see my exposure on wide receiver was a lot higher than I had at running back. Running back, it's kind of like Davis, Gaskin, Montgomery, and then I'm like sprinkling stuff, right? I have Phillip Lindsay in 5 lineups. I have Aaron Jones in 5 lineups, but my Aaron Jones lineups like didn't have Devontae Adams in them, right? Because he was going to be lower owned, right? Adrian Peterson here, right? In my non-Golladay lineups. Devonta Freeman, cheap. I needed cheap running backs in order to jam in 6K wide receivers, right? So I need to include them. I need to take a shot at Freeman or Peterson or David Johnson or Lindsey and those types of guys because I can't just play 7K running backs and get up to them. I didn't think in the wide receiver range there were that many 4K type of guys that had enough ceiling. Yeah, I had some Mooney. I had some Humphreys, right? Marvin Jones at 5K. T. Higgins, I mean, he got there, right? Randall Cobb, but Randall Cobb was only in game stacks. I did not play Randall Cobb as a one-off. James Washington was, James Washington. Chase Claypool, 25% owned. James Washington, 3% owned. Leverage play. Didn't mean I played him in a ton of lineups. I wasn't playing that much of the Pittsburgh-Cleveland game, so he only appeared in 5 lineups. Laviska Shenault as a run back in Lion stacks to mitigate the ownership of Golladay. So, I mean, even Juju, right? I had 2 lineups with Juju, and he didn't get there, right? As leverage off of Claypool. This is how I build lineups. I'm not predicting what's going to do well. I have no idea, right? I played a ton of that Green Bay Tampa Bay game that didn't get there, right? And the Bucks blew them out, and the stacks didn't get there. But I also played Bear stacks. That didn't get there either, right? I mean, like look how much I got wrong. But it's not about getting it right or wrong. It's about building lineups so if you are right, how much do you win? If you're right and you come in 658th place, like, who cares? When I'm right, can I come in first? How do I get there? Build lineups for that if you're playing large field GPPs. And that's what LineupHQ can help you do. The projections are in there. And then you have to devise your own strategies. LineupHQ didn't tell me to play 20% Justin Jefferson. It would have wanted, if you just went by median projection, to jam in as much Thielen as possible. But I knew a lot of people were playing Thielen, so I'm going to play the leverage spot against him. Same for Robinson. I had to tell LineupHQ to play more Robinson, to play more Godwin, to play more McLaurin, and more Adams. I had to tell it that. It's not going to tell me. Look at all my exposures here. I'm setting mins and maxes, right? And I'm running it multiple times. This isn't like I ran this once and this is what I entered. This is like the 50th or 60th time where I'm running it going, okay, I need more of this guy, I need more of that guy, I'm not getting enough of this, I'm adding groups, I'm changing stack percentages, I'm even changing, I'm not getting what I want, let me add some randomness to it, right? The range of outcomes, just so it could fit in more, right? I originally had this set at 49.9, so I lowered it to 49.8 after I was still getting a little too much chalk. So I'm like, maybe it's trying to jam in defenses that I don't need, right? And here you go, wide receiver in the flex, 82%. That's what I chose to do that. LineupHQ didn't tell me. I chose to do that. And then in order to limit it even more, I was getting a little too... So I got some lineups and some builds that were too chalky. So too much of the chalk guys were together. And then also too much of the contrarian guys were together. So I was getting lineups that had total ownership of 150 and 50. I don't want that. I don't want the diversification where like, oh, Madison, Davis, and Montgomery are all in lineups together like this. And then I have lineups that have like three completely contrarian running backs. So to control that, after I saw the builds, I set this. I originally set this at 135, and then I had to lower it to 125. I originally set this at 70, then I had to up it to 75. So I'm controlling that after I build. So like these would be on 0 to begin with. I just want to see what I get. And then once I see too chalky, too contrarian, I want to like cut off the tops and bottoms. And instead of just deleting those lineups, I'll just run the build again. And I'll go and I'll see the lineups that come in, 50% cumulative ownership, like they're going to be gone if I just up this number up. And the ones at the top that have too much chalk, they'll be gone if I lower it. It depends on the slate because these numbers really depend. How chalk is the chalk, right? So we have some slates where like no one's more than 20% owned because it's kind of spread out. So the max total lineup ownership, a chalky lineup may only be, 110, right? A contrarian lineup that's at 60 may be fine, right? That still may be good. So like this is all dependent on the slate. And then, number of unique players. I wanted more diverse, right? If I set it at 1, I get very similar lineups next to each other with just the defense changes. Like I want more diversification than that when I'm playing 120 lineups. So I put it up to 3. If I saw I wasn't getting enough diversification with 3, I'd move it up to 4 and build more. If I saw I wanted to be a little bit more condensed, I would have went down to 2. It's not something that you put in right now. These randomness settings, I had at 0. I just want pure optimal until I saw that it was trying to jam in too much optimal. I was getting too much Thielen, too much Madison, too much chalk. And I'm like, okay, let me up it for the wide receivers because I wanted to get wide receivers with ceilings that may not have median-wise projected all that well. So I got to bump up the wide receiver randomness. But that's how I do it. This is what I do on Saturday night before Sunday slates. And then in the morning, I'm telling you, in the morning, I go one by one through every lineup. That's what I do. I wake up in the morning, get my apple juice, because I don't drink coffee anymore. And I go through. I just scroll. I mean, all I have to do is scroll. All I have to do is scroll. I've set everything up. I know I'm going to have a stack. And I'm going to look and I go, does it make sense to have this guy in this lineup? Does it make sense to have this guy in this lineup? Does it make sense to have this guy in this lineup? Right? Because a lot of times, like as I'm building, I'm adding groups. Like some of these groups at the bottom, I didn't even notice. Right? I just looked at lineups and like take a look at this group. Let's see. What was this? Like the defense. Like I was getting Laviska with the Jaguars defense. So like, does that make any sense? Right? Probably not. I would want to have Robinson in there, not Chenault. So once I saw that, I'm like, okay, set Jaguars a conditional player, use exactly 0 players, and put Laviska in there. I saw that from looking at a lineup. I'd take a look at this stack. Here you go. Henry and Johnson, not in the 2 running backs from the opposing sides of a game. Put that in. Make sure you only use one of them. Here's another one. What's this group of 3? Darnell Mooney, right? He's a 3K wide receiver. Like I didn't want him just floating out into nothingness, into lineups that didn't have any part of the Carolina-Chicago game. So I set Darnell Mooney to be tied to either Bridgewater, Foles, or Davis. Now this is very important. If I just tied it to Bridgewater and Foles, that means he'd only show up in stacks. Means I would have him with Foles plus Robinson plus Mooney. And then obviously my run back for Carolina would have been Davis or Robbie Anderson. Or Mooney could appear in lineups where I'm playing Bridgewater, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and Mooney is the run back. But if I don't put Mike Davis here, that means Mooney will never show up in any other lineups other than those game stacks. But since I'm playing a ton of Mike Davis, I don't mind the secondary correlation, right? There's some other quarterback, some other game stack in the lineup, but I'm playing Mike Davis, and instead of playing Allen Robinson on the other side, I'm playing Darnell Mooney. So this lineup gives me that. So he's not as a one-off, just out in the blue, just Bears, just one guy, just sitting out there. That was my choice. I had to set it in LineupHQ to do that. After I saw him showing up in lineups, I didn't necessarily even think about it until I start making my first couple of builds. I scroll through and I go, do I really want Darnell Mooney just as a one-off? No. Make this group. So this is LineupHQ. This is what you can get. To essentially, you're putting your lineups on a conveyor belt. This is exactly your thought process, what it should be when you hand build lineups, right? I'm just programming a tool so I don't have to physically go in and make 120 lineups that way. But all the lineups I have here is what I would hand build. I mean, with the correlations as much as possible. With the leverage. Properly leveraged for the contest that it's in. It's exactly what I would do hand building. And then I'm programming LineupHQ to kind of put it on an assembly line so that, okay, make the first lineup. Okay, make the second lineup. Make the third lineup. Making 120 lineups by hand would take all day. This, I could do this in an hour, right? And I'm experienced with LineupHQ. I know all the intricacies of how this thing works. And it still takes me, 50 different builds and 100 minutes, right, to go through everything. And I still double check my work in the morning. So if you want to learn more about LineupHQ, more about lineup building in general, correlation, leverage, strategies, I'm always in the RotoGrinders Premium Discord. Sign up for RotoGrinders Premium, rotogrinders.com/premium. And we have tutorials about this. RotoGrinders has so much content. It's how I learned how to play DFS. I started playing DFS in 2015. You know what I did a couple of months later? I signed up for RotoGrinders. That's literally what I did. I signed up for RotoGrinders, and I read and I watched everything I possibly can. Noto, Cards, Chop, all those guys, they taught me how to play DFS. I was going through, looking at the Roto Academy content, looking at the tutorials, just learning how to play the game. And that's what I did for 3 years. And I made money. My first year, I made money every year playing DFS. Won plenty of GPPs, positive profit in cash games, and did well enough that they asked me to be on the team. So, I eat my own dog food. I use LineupHQ. I was a RotoGrinder subscriber that I paid. I happily paid my monthly fee and get all the content and all the shows and all the access that I could possibly need. And now you can do the same. I can teach you. So hopefully you sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. And if I don't win $50,000 in the GPP that's coming up next, that we're both in, I hope that someone that watched this video or someone that subscribed to RotoGrinders does. Because I always think of myself first. I won $50,000 today, but I still teach you how you can do the same. And then we're kind of competing against one another in the contest. So you build good lineups. I build good lineups. Let the games kind of happen what they happen, but you're looking to put yourself in a position to come in first place. And that's what I did. And won $50,000. So hopefully I'll see you next time on RotoGrinders.com.
Hey, thanks for checking out our videos. If you want more expert advice on DraftKings, FanDuel, or any other daily fantasy sports, make sure you check out the current videos playlist.